Hello, hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's session. We're very happy to have Mary Ann with us again today. We're going to be covering the paint effect. It's all about the paint. So let us know where you're watching us from on the social feeds, as we are monitoring those as much as possible. And I can ask those questions of Mary Ann towards the end of the session. If you are following us on Zoom, your audio is being recorded. Or sorry, the session is being recorded and your audio is muted. We do use these sessions and post them later, so you can go back and review. And today is actually part one, so we're excited about that, all about the paint. We've added a second session with this one. Sorry, whoops, my screens are going crazy here. Apologize for that. So we've added a second session, Mary Ann also covering the paint effect. So it looks like we've got quite a house full of people watching on Zoom in the feed. So Mary Ann, as this is a two-parter, we better get to it. So I will go ahead and get you going.
All right, great. Thanks, Dawn. So yeah, all about the paint, which is a bigger topic than I anticipated. So I've split it into two. So hopefully you guys can come back for part two. And I hope all is well with everybody as I'm sharing my screen here. Everything all good. Zoom is there. Hopefully you guys can see this nice, lovely ripple of water. So today's session is going to emphasize kind of how to most efficiently create some shapes. And then part two is going to be more of an emphasis of actually using the shapes and all the different features within the paint effect. That way we're not kind of crunched for time at the end as far as how to use paint effect. So drawing, especially if you're like me, drawing is not my thing. I'm not great at it, as why it's not my thing. And let me just divide a little bit better here. I have adjusted my resolution for my screen so you guys can see everything a little bit bigger. So that means I get to scroll around a little bit more. And so I'm in the image category in my effects palette, and this is where the paint effect is that we're going to be using. But I just want to give you guys a quick heads up that the mosaic effect and the blur effect and the spot color effect also have pretty much the same tools. Not all the same tools in all these instances. But what I love about just going for the paint effect is it has the options I need that these other effects have built in. So I can easily switch it up if I need to. I'm just going to go ahead and apply the paint effect to my image. And I've got the effects workspace set to a keyboard shortcut. So I just went into the effects workspace and we could see the paint effect. Now I'm going to be doing a little bit of scrolling around to see the different features for this as I'm drawing and that kind of thing. But I want you guys to be able to see this as big as possible. So just with this resolution, that's kind of how it goes. But you guys probably won't be doing a lot of this on your systems. Okay, so with the paint, my first tip is when possible, take advantage of the rectangle and oval tool. So I just want to talk about how to manipulate that to kind of get you guys into creative thinking for that. Especially if you're like me when I first started with the paint effect and I just always popped over to the curve tool, which we'll talk about why I avoid that tool now. But it was my go-to. So if that's your go-to, I'm going to hopefully help you stop going to it. So I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool and draw like a rectangle. And so I can do any shape rectangle I want. One note, if you're used to working in an application where you can hold down your shift key to create like perfect squares and that kind of thing, this is not that kind of effect. You can't do that. You have to kind of eyeball it. All right, so I drew kind of a square. Usually I'm tracing around objects and that'll help me get the square if I need it. As soon as I'm done drawing, Media Composer takes me to the selection tool for all the tools but one that we're going to talk about today. Which is good because then I can move this around, or if I need to reshape it at all, I can quickly and easily do that. Now, what if I need more of a diamond where I want the point, this point, for example, at the top of the screen? I could go to the rotate tool and then turn this, all right? But again, there's no shift key to constrain at 45-degree angles and 90-degree angles. So it's a little bit of a guess. You can do it, and I've got it pretty good here. And if you're working on outlining something, or tracing something, this can work out well, but I'm going to show you an alternative in just a second. Before I do that, I'm just going to pop over to a couple parameters that I always use with paint, almost most of the time. One is feathering. Usually I want a little bit of a soft edge, and we're going to really be using feathering in the second session, but I wanted to at least point it out. And then when I click away here, you'll see now I have these feathered edges. And you can see a little goes a long way. So I probably did a little bit too much feathering. Yeah, that's might be close to what I normally do. Usually less than 10 for sure. And then the other thing I'm always doing if I'm using a solid shape at all is changing the color. And so you can click and drag hue. And I'm going to create a bunch of colored shapes today to show a feature in the paint effect you guys might need to tap into. So I can change the hue. And then if I double click the color swatch, it'll get me to the Media Composer colors. So I can also switch them here as well. Okay, so those are a couple of parameters I'm going to be using quite a bit. Now, in terms of an alternative to like a diamond shape, I can actually use the oval for this. I just grab the oval tool and I'm going to click and drag and draw. And notice it automatically gives me the soft edge because I'm in the same paint. So it's kind of assuming I'm going to want the same edge. And I'm going to go ahead and just shift color a little bit here. There we go. And there's a reason for that that'll come up. And then to reshape this is how I'm going to create like a diamond shape for it. And so I get the selection tool, which allows you to scale and reposition. 2 tools down is the reshape tool. And notice I get these corner points. If I could actually click on these vertices or control points, you'll notice that there's little Bezier handles. So these are curve points with a Bezier handle. When I click on my square, and if I double click, by the way, which is a trick I use all the time, is double click to toggle between the selection tool and the reshape tool. When I click these corners, they're actual corners. So to get my diamond and make sure it's perfectly vertical if I need it, I'm gonna double click the circle and then I'm gonna hold down my Option key, Alt on Windows, and click these vertex points and they will convert to corners, okay? So I'm starting to get like a strange baseball diamond here. And now I have that perfect up and down shape if I happen to need that. So that's tip number 1, is to try to take advantage of the default shapes. A lot of times, especially people with faces, I don't just automatically trace their face. I start with an oval and then I might add points and that kind of thing. So I usually start with these points. Okay, so that's one tip. Another tip is that you can change not only the control points, make them corners and curves, you can actually change the direction. So I'm actually going to do a quick animation here for this next one, starting with my oval or circle, and then tweak the color again. There we go. Okay. So for this, I'm actually going to convert this circle to a heart. So a little bit with keyframing and some gotchas with that can happen. So I'm going to just add a keyframe here. This is where my animation's going to be a heart. So my first keyframe is already a circle. And then the second keyframe is going to be a heart. But notice at the end, there's a third keyframe. And that third keyframe is automatically there. This paint effect, animate, blur, those kind of effects automatically get start and end keyframes. So you want to be mindful of that. If you're like keyframing, all of a sudden it seems to be drifting back to the original. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click this third keyframe. So that way, once it converts to a heart, it'll stay as a heart. Now to get my heart, I need to reshape. So I'm going to double click my shape. So it automatically takes me to the reshape tool. And then the bottom of it is going to be a point. So I'm going to Option Alt on Windows, click that point. And so there we go. We get the bottom of it. Now I'm not promising a great heart. Again, keep in mind, I can't draw, I can trace. And this is about as free form as I can get. So those of you with higher skills, I can probably see your brains already calculating different things you can do to this and visualize that would blow my mind. So I say go for it. So then on this one, I'm going to drag this point down, but that's a pretty sad heart even for me with my drawing skills. So what I really need to do is convert this handle so they're not working together. I need to change the angle so you can see like on the left there, that's more of a regular heart, whereas the right's just a mess now. So to do that, I'm going to hold down my Option key and click one of the handles. And now they work. No, I didn't Option click hard enough because we're live. All right, let's try that again. All right, if I drag a little bit, it does it. Okay, so when I click and drag it now, they're separate. So now, because they're separate, I can completely customize this shape. And it's still wonky because it's me drawing, but definitely a much better heart than if I tried to just draw it freehand. So thinking about those shapes, and if I play it back, there we go, drawing a nice heart there. Now my resolution's a little bit low. I have my video quality at the bottom set to a lower quality just because we're working over Zoom. So this is not like top quality or anything. Okay, so we've got that. So a couple tips with that. Another tip is when you're drawing. So I mentioned the curve tool at the beginning. And I said, I used to use this all the time because I can't draw and I can kind of trace around something quickly. So I'm just going to trace around an imaginary object here. So let's say that I'm drawing like broccoli or something. And when I double click, notice there's like wonkiness kind of going here. That's because I kind of went and switched directions randomly. That's going to happen. And now it's just kind of messy. But also notice that the shape isn't all that smooth. So that's because as you change direction, it's going to add control points. You're going to end up with a lot of control points. Whereas if you use the poly tool, and I just clicked my shape, by the way, and hit the delete key, that's how that disappeared. But with the poly tool, I can create corner shapes. Like maybe I need a triangle, which there's no triangle tool. So I can click and create that. And I'm going to use this. So I'm going to, for something, I'm going to go ahead and switch the color on it. There we go. Yellow hasn't, we haven't used yellow yet. Okay. So like a triangle shape, corner shape, just by clicking around something. Probably you're going to be tracing something that's got curves. So what I do is I click and drag. So click, hold, and drag, and I'll start getting curves. Okay. And those of you guys who are good with this tool could probably freeform yourself a heart or a blob. Okay. And so when I double click this, I have less points and I can manipulate them more easily. Okay. So I have a couple drawing tips that I'll show you guys, but I don't have as many points as I did with the other one. Now with the curve tool, you can click these points and delete the ones you don't need. Okay. But this is a little bit easier to work with. Okay. All right. So two more tips on this, and then I have another drawing tip as well on a different video clip. I just want to do that. Stacking order, that's why I created all these shapes. The one that's on top is the blob that I just curved or polyed. And then I've got this diamond that I created from the circle. At the very first thing I created was the diamond that I rotated. And then I also created a closed shape triangle. You can change the stacking order of these. There's a tool for this that you can bring backwards. So I could send my triangle backwards. And then I can also bring it forwards. If you need to bring something all the way forwards or all the way back, it's Option or Alt. So notice that it's a lot about the Option and the Alt key. Okay, so now it's all the way back. So I have my Option key down. It's the bottommost one. Okay. There's no like layers. So for those of you who use graphic programs where you could see your layers and that kind of thing. So you have to kind of be able to move things out of the way and click them and move them, stack them with these buttons rather than dragging and dropping layers. So just a heads up there. All right. And then what if I need to get rid of all of this magic? I can actually just draw a lasso, because a lot of times, and you'll see this in the next session, I can't see my object. So I'll just lasso, and I very quickly forget where my objects are because they're seamlessly blending into a video scene. So when you lasso, it'll select them, and then you can just hit your delete key to delete them. Okay, I'm not going to delete my heart yet because it's probably one of the better ones I've actually drawn in classes and stuff. One note about keyframing is that you want to have all of your control points set before you start keyframing. And what I mean by that is before I start changing my circle. Because if I decide for whatever reason that I need another control point at the beginning or something, so I'm at the first frame and I'm in the reshape, because I have, you can see my Bezier handle. If I click the edge, let me try that again. Okay, if I click the edge, it adds a point, but notice my circle is no longer perfect because it's close to the other point. So if you are going to keyframe something over time, and usually this will happen if I'm doing like a face or something and the face is moving closer, reshapes a bit because they turn their head, that kind of thing. You always want to make sure that you have all the points you need before you start keyframing. Okay, so you'll see more of that in action in our next session, but that gets you guys the basics. So if that happens, that's why. So maximum amount of points before you start keyframing. Okay, oops. Let's just start it off. Okay, now all the shapes I've created are closed shapes, meaning that they actually have a start and an end. I can't grab my poly tool and start drawing here and then hope to have like kind of a brush stroke of some sort. I'm stuck. That, and if you make a mistake, just keep going, because the only way to get out of this is either to double click to close it or click at the first point you created. All right, so there's no modifier keys to kind of fix that, like in some other programs. It's really designed for basic corrections and simple stuff. Although you can, I've seen some pretty complex stuff with people that have a lot of patience with rotoscoping, which I am not one of those creators. So, but if you need an open shape, you're going to want to use the brush tool. Okay, and so with the brush tool, you can just draw. It is a drawing tool, a lovely S or whatever. And notice I let go without closing it. So it's an open shape. One big gotcha with this is it stays with the brush tool. So to manipulate it, I actually need to go to the selection tool. And when I go to the selection tool, I'm getting beeped at quite a bit, but that's okay. I've done a lot in this effect. When you go to your brush, the selection tool, then you get the brush options. I do need to shrink my screen just a bit here. I might be able to go the other way. Usually this works better. So you can see some parameters. So I talked a little bit about feathering and then color. Well, down at the bottom is brush options, and that's specific to the brush tool. And so you get things like size. I can change the size of my brush stroke because my S wasn't wonky enough. Now it's even better. And if you make it big enough, you can actually customize your brush shape. Having a hard time clicking here, but yeah, my other resolution, you can click these. Maybe if I make it a little bit bigger, you can, yep, I can't today with this resolution, but yeah, you can totally click these control points and customize them. Or if you're working on Zoom, just click these guys and they'll change the shape for you. And it kind of changes the brush shape. As you can see, it's no longer rounded edges, it's more of a diamond. All right, so you can change the brush shape. What I want to show is how to draw on a shape, and then next session I'm going to show you guys how to take it next level and make a really clean like signature type effect. This one's obviously not going to be clean because it's me drawing. All right, so I'm going to delete all my keyframes, and here goes my hearts, deleting everything. So I'm just going to create that brush stroke one more time just so you guys can see all the steps. And so I'm going to start at the top here. This is why the next session draw on is going to be so much better, because as you can see, that's not great. But here's the steps. I draw on, and then if I want this to animate, I add my keyframe. So I'm just going to add my keyframe here. So that's the end of the stroke. It's a good idea to have everything set up before you actually keyframe. Otherwise, you need to kind of select all your keyframes. I just did a Command A to select all my keyframes. And then, you know, get your brush stroke set up, get your softness if you want a soft edge. I use the soft edge when I'm doing these brush strokes rather than blur, or sorry, feathering, because it usually is a little bit more subtle. And so I got my size, I got my softness. There we go. Now, to animate this one, and I'm going to keep this one for next session, so we'll have a comparison. What I'm going to do is just go to my first keyframe, and then I animate path. And now, let me just step into source record mode here a second and full screen, because that's how, so we can super analyze my drawing skills. But now it's animating on. So it just was 2 keyframes and that kind of thing. So yeah, not clean. And I'm sure some of you guys can get this. I've seen some really lovely stuff freehand. So if you're more like me and yours is going to turn out like this, next session, I'm going to show you how to make like clean lettering, which is the big reason why, one of the big reasons why I wanted 2 sessions for this. Okay. So final tips for drawing, other than use your circles, use your rectangles, use your brushes, that kind of thing. Use your stacking order, no modifier keys when you're drawing. But the last one is when you are drawing with a poly tool, because we should all be using the poly tool if we have to trace around something, is that you want to drive in one direction. Treat your shape that you're tracing as a one-way street. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the paint effect to this. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my poly tool. And just to show, if I try to draw around this with the other tool, which is how I used to do this, because I was so bad with the poly tool. Going really fast because of time, but there we go. This is how many points you get, and you really have to manipulate and delete a lot of points. All right, it's doable because I've done it. But once you practice, and what I recommend is, this is actually an image we use in class, but what I recommend is just go online and get one of those like education images that have numbers to help children draw. And as adult children, those are perfect for us in Media Composer, you know, scan it, import it, that kind of thing. But basically what I'm gonna do is trace around this. And I'm gonna start by clicking, holding, and dragging to create a control point and a vertex. And you'll notice that where I'm drawing tends to be at the curve, the middle of the curve on all of these. And I'm drawing in one direction, because if I go like this, instead of going to my right, clockwise, and go backwards, notice I'm getting this wonky shape. We'll keep that for now. And now I've got a curly Q. And now I'm like, well, how do I fix it? Well, finish drawing and then you fix it, because once you're in, you're in. So the biggest hang up I get with people who are new to this, especially if they're coming from a graphic design background, is getting the drawing tools to go. And I say draw fast, and that frees up time for fixing. But now I'm like all good. I'm going one direction. I'm not going to have any more wonkiness. All right, I'm going to draw fast because I know we're running low on time. Okay, this, and then close. All right, so awesome, it's perfect, almost. But I can fix that wonkiness afterwards, which is why if you make a mistake, just keep going. And it should prompt you to just draw faster, because if you're like me, you want to fix those mistakes as soon as possible. So now that I'm in the selection tool, I'm going to double click to go to the reshape. And then when I click this guy, all I have to do is swing this back around, and there we go. So that's what happened, is I drew the wrong direction and it reversed the Bezier handles. So you can adjust these. If you're in a spot where you kind of need 2 different lengths, you can do the option Alt on Windows, drag, and then you can clean this up quickly. And then the last piece of this is, what if you do have a mix of round, curved, and corners? Well, generally I'll just go ahead and commit to round, the click, hold, and drag to get my handles. And then to get the corner point, I will hold on my option key, Alt on Windows, drag this Bezier, and I actually align it with the straight line. And to see that, I'm going to double click real fast and take down my opacity over here. Okay, so in mode, we're going to talk about modes more in the next session. I take down my opacity so you can kind of see my outline. So this is what I'll do if I'm having a hard time keeping track of my object. Okay, so now when I click this point, I'll line it right on the line, actually, in this case. And it might be an imaginary line in real life, but same with this side. So because I option drag those handles, one side has Bezier and the other side is essentially a corner now. All right, and then I can keep going. And then with your shapes, generally with your handles, you just want it to touch the shape. Tangent, if anybody remembers, I think it was geometry class. I remember somewhere in school where it's tangent if it just touches the line and it does not cross over. If it crosses into your shape, it distorts. All right. So there you go. And you're going to see in the next session when I draw shapes around objects, especially moving objects, faces, that kind of thing, it does not have to be this precise. If I have to be this precise, I'm usually hoping that I have a resource outside the paint effect because it's just a little faster and more forgiving, but absolutely doable without having to learn another resource. All right. So hopefully that helps you guys with drawing tips and then corrective and mode tips and all the other options and paint effects. Come back for part 2 and we'll do those. So with that, I'm going to pop over to Zoom so I can get my audio back and see if we have questions.
Okay, can you hear me, Marianne?
I can.
Awesome. So we wanted to confirm a couple of things.
Yeah.
Did you say no modifiers is best when you're using paint?
Yeah, so in some programs, if you hold down your shift key, you can create a perfect square, a perfect circle. You can hold down your shift key if you want to, which I used to do because I was used to it. It doesn't happen now. So no modifier keys until after you draw, because they're not available. But once you draw, let me just pull this one out. I can Option, Alt on Windows, click to convert, and then Option and Alt to sever the Bezier handles so they can work independently of each other. But that's essentially it as far as modifiers go.
All right, cool. Next time, are you able to show us a simple vinaigrette image?
Oh, like a vignette?
Yes. Sorry, vignette.
Okay. No problem. I'm like, I don't know this effect. So I'll try. I would look for it and be like, oh, it's a vinaigrette effect. No, yes. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to break this into 2 parts, is because I only have so much time to, so many examples I can show. For vignettes is one I'm going to show. I'm going to show you guys how to draw like a signature, but make it clean. I'm also going to show you guys how to obscure junk that's in the shot or issues. So I'll be able to show all of those next time. But yeah, I will definitely show you how I do a vignette. It's super simple, actually.
Awesome. Also, are you able to touch on the magic mask within the paint tool?
Yeah, I don't have an example called up right now. I'll show it. It's finicky. I'm not, it's like, I don't go to it very often because it's very specific with your colors, but I'll show you guys it. And I've never really mastered it because it can be a little finicky. But I wasn't going to show it, but I'll show it because you guys asked. So next session.
All right, sounds good. Let me see if we have any other questions coming in. When is the next class? We're getting ready to post that. So are there any other questions coming in from Mary on the paint, Marianne for the paint effect? And then we'll go ahead and pop up our slide. Marianne's next session will be July 8th, and we'll be covering volume 2 at that point. So let me just see, quick randomly looking at all the feeds. You're getting a lot of hearts. So we love that. Oh, someone commented your little loop-de-loo on your S did look like a little heart. So they had seen that in your little video there. So it looks like no other questions are coming in at this point, Marianne. And we're going to be so excited for volume 2. So that'll be posted on the calendar that you can get at avid.com, live online learning. And again, let us know what you'd like to see. And we have Marianne, who's been doing a lot of the media composers, and Andy, who's been doing Pro Tools. So we look for new courses for any of those. And with that, we'll let everyone get on with their day. Thanks, Marianne.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.